From the Grayman Briefing, this is a summary of recent developments regarding the Second Amendment, cybersecurity, protests, supply chain disruptions, national security, law and order, free speech, censorship, government oversight, and more. Now, for your situational awareness, Super Essie will be reading out the latest update. Get briefs sent in real time at graymanbriefing.com. That's Gray with an A. Let's get into it.
Starting with the preparedness and natural disaster briefing, Hurricane Beryl impacted the Texas coast in the Gulf of Mexico earlier this week as a Category 1. A hurricane warning was in effect for approximately 1 million people in Texas. Life-threatening storm surge, damaging winds, and significant flash and urban flooding caused damage, and early reports indicate 8 people were killed. The storm had already impacted Mexico and the Caribbean as a Category 5 hurricane. Texas school systems, airports, major oil shipping operations were all suspended. 2.7 million households and businesses were without power in Texas on the 8th of July, with 1.3 million still out by the 10th. Major internet outages, particularly Spectrum, were also reported. The area was under a heat advisory, with feels-like temperatures reaching 105 degrees Fahrenheit. With that in mind, think of those without power. It's feeling like 105 degrees outside. Things were not fantastic in Texas over the last few days. We saw videos of cars by the hundreds waiting in line for gasoline, 600 signal lights in Houston alone were out, and we saw reports of food purchases being limited by grocers. Shifting into major incident, supply chain, and national security briefings. An explosion occurred at the General Dynamics Armament and Technical Products Facility in Arkansas. The incident led to 2 individuals being injured and initially 1 person being reported missing. The explosion caused damage to a warehouse building on the premises. Local authorities and emergency services responded to the scene, and an investigation is underway to determine the cause of that explosion. Initial reports indicate that pyrotechnics or explosives caused an energetic incident. Moving on to government oversight and self-sufficiency. In Oregon, laws limit the use of groundwater on private properties to irrigate up to half an acre for personal use, not for commercial purposes. So what we're talking about here are the current laws in Oregon and how they're limiting regular people from having gardens. There's been some exaggeration about this, so the briefing did a clarification, and we'll quickly touch on it. So some small farms violated this by using groundwater without a permit for crops they sold. With increased enforcement funding that came in 2021, the Water Resource Department mandated that these farms must obtain water use rights, a process that still takes up to a year. Misconceptions spread claiming that personal garden watering was banned, which is technically false. The government has made it difficult to sustain a home garden, particularly larger gardens capable of producing quantities for sale. So they haven't banned gardening, but they do make it quite difficult to access water to be able to keep your garden sustained. Moving on to some other legal updates. Over in Idaho, a series of primarily Republican-backed laws are now in effect. They started on July 1st. This includes Senate Bill 1234, requiring insurance companies to provide up to a 6-month supply of prescribed contraceptives. House Bill 441 decriminalizes the use of fentanyl testing strips. House Bill 406 imposes mandatory minimum prison sentences for fentanyl possession. Other laws also address issues such as the housing choice vouchers, a new Don't Tread on Me license plate. They've just created one where you can get that license plate now, at least a version of it. Also, some of the laws include bans on public funds for gender-affirming care and restrictions on the use of preferred pronouns without parental consent. So basically, the new law makes it where you can't require employees, such as school teachers, to use the pronoun the child wants them to use, unless the parent comes to that school teacher and says, hey, you have to use this pronoun. Okay, next up, we're going to look at one of the national summaries that the Grayman Briefing has done. This one is on censorship, bias, and privacy. So if you're not familiar, basically, the Grayman Briefing, if they're seeing a whole lot happening under one category, they'll do short little summaries for each little development. So for censorship, bias, and privacy, I've got 4 things to cover here for you. you can obviously get more of this in detail with sources if you sign up for the Grayman Briefing at graymanbriefing.com. Let's look at this one. We're also going to touch later on cybersecurity, their national summary on that, and also the national summary on civil unrest. First up, the U.S. House Committee has issued a subpoena to the U.S. Department of State over claims of proxy censorship. The committee is investigating allegations that the State Department may have used third parties to suppress certain viewpoints and censor content online. This action is part of a broader examination of potential government overreach in regulating online speech. Next, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 to dismiss a lawsuit challenging the Biden administration's communication with social media companies about content moderation. The decision reverses a lower court ruling that had restricted government communication. So the Supreme Court says, hey, the federal government can talk to social media and basically pressure them. Moving up is this one's on the Google search result manipulation related to the upcoming election. Studies indicate manipulation of Google search results are favoring President Joe Biden's campaign website over former President Donald Trump's. Searches for campaign websites display Biden's site at the top, while Trump's site is ranked much lower or not at all. Next, the U.S. Supreme Court dismissed challenges to Florida and Texas laws restricting social media companies' content moderation. These laws require platforms to host third-party communications and prevent blocking posts based on political viewpoints. Okay, let's shift now into Second Amendment. The U.S. Supreme Court has declined to hear a challenge to the Illinois assault weapons ban in the National Association for Gun Rights versus Highland Park case. SCOTUS opted not to review the challenge by leaving the lower court's decision intact, which upheld the state's authority to impose such bans. SCOTUS had previously denied an injunction against the Protect Illinois Community Act, this is PICA. PICA outlaws rifle magazines with 10-plus rounds and handguns with 15-plus rounds. It bans most semi-automatic rifles with fixed magazines, also includes AR-15s. PICA also called for the formation of an ATF strike team and banned firearm parts. It also bans devices such as trigger mechanism. It banned 190 different types of firearms by name. The decision, this recent one we're talking about here at the Supreme Court, it aligns with the court's recent stance on allowing state-level gun control measures to stand without federal intervention. In a separate opinion on the Illinois case, Justice Clarence Thomas expressed support for challenging future bans. He urged the court to consider another case, arguing the popular semi-automatic firearm such as the AR-15 needs clearer guidelines to define which weapons are, quote, dangerous and, quote, unusual. He criticized the Seventh Circuit's decision to uphold the state ban, calling it nonsensical in light of a landmark 2008 court ruling that excluded military-grade weapons like the M16 rifle from the Second Amendment protection. Clarence said, quote, "It is difficult to see how the Seventh Circuit could have concluded that the most widely owned semi-automatic rifles are not arms protected by the Second Amendment," end quote. Okay, now we're going to move into another national summary. This one is on cybersecurity. Truist Bank has confirmed a data breach after information from an October 2023 cyber attack recently appeared on a hacking forum. The stolen data includes details of 65,000 employees, also bank transaction, account numbers, and source code. Truist claims the breach was contained and additional security measures were implemented. Next, ransomware attacks have forced local governments in Traverse City, Michigan, Cleveland, Ohio, Pensacola, Florida, and Newburgh, New York to shut down services, affecting both taxes, filing for taxes, or your local taxes. Water permit payments, emergency services did remain functional, but the attacks caused significant disruptions to regular administrative functions in 4 cities and 4 states here the last few weeks. Following recent cyber attacks, CDK Global is now warning customers about phishing attempts. This is the attack on the dealerships where 15,000 dealerships couldn't efficiently sell vehicles or order parts. So CDK advised that bad actors are contacting their customers posing as members or affiliates of CDK in order to obtain system access. Next, state Texas state agencies and public universities were affected by a cyber attack on Microsoft systems in January, linked to the Russian group known as Midnight Blizzard. This includes emails of officials at various Texas departments. Next, Infosys McCamish Systems disclosed that the Lockbit ransomware attack from November 2023 led to the breach of 6 million purses, including customers of major banks and insurance companies. Next, parts of Nebraska and South Dakota suffered a 911 outage on July 9th. T-Mobile experienced a disruption, preventing customers from calling 911 also on the same day, same night. Some reports indicate that service was restored in some areas after about 30 minutes. Looks like South Dakota first got restored, and some of the disruptions may still be ongoing. And if you've been tracking, there have been at least 7 or 8 different 911 outages this year. Some of them touching more than 10 states at a time. All right, that's it with that national summary. Now we're going to look at some different topics here. First up is major crime. In a recent operation in New York City, the U.S. Marshals found 41 missing children and arrested 3 suspects, including a registered sex offender. The operation was part of a national effort titled Operation We Will Find You, which successfully located 200 missing or endangered children in several states. The operation is part of ongoing efforts by law enforcement to recover missing children and apprehend those who exploit them. Moving on, also in major crime and civil unrest, in San Diego, California, 8 SoCal Antifa members were sentenced to prison for their involvement in a 2021 attack on pro-Trump supporters and the community. Sentences range from 30 days to 5 years, with charges including conspiracy to riot and assault. The case is notable for being the first successful U.S. prosecution convicting multiple members of an Antifa cell. These are the ones who were, the Antifa folks were patrolling the boardwalk in San Diego looking for people they thought may be Trump supporters, and then they would send out other members to assault them. And let's shift now into civil unrest and societal collapse. And this is another national summary. And I'm only going to touch, maybe give you like a sentence or two summary of each little event. And if you're interested in any more of these, if you want to see videos of these riots and protests and actions, definitely go to Grayman Briefing and sign up. First up, in Cromwell, Connecticut, climate activists associated with Extinction Rebellion disrupted the PGA's Travelers Golf Championship and deployed smoke canisters on the 18th hole. In LA, pro-Palestinians and pro-Israelis clashed outside a synagogue, leading to multiple physical altercations. Separately, 100-plus juveniles on skateboards disrupted traffic, and 500-plus teenagers conducted a street takeover, blocking intersections and causing chaos there in LA. In New York City, 800-plus pro-Palestinian protesters disrupted a Biden campaign event, leading to clashes with NYPD officers. In Cambridge, pro-Palestinians marched in residential neighborhoods and partially surrounded a house belonging to Elbit. That's a defense contractor for the U.S. In Chicago and New York City, pro-Palestinians disrupted pride parades, leading to physical altercations and vandalisms. Again in Cambridge, pro-Palestinians occupied the Cambridge Democracy Center. Nationwide, pro-Palestinian affiliations have begun calling for a separation from LGBT groups. These LGBT groups previously were supporting the pro-Palestinian movement, but now the Palestinians are saying that it's time to separate and there can be no pride while there is genocide. They've been disrupting pride events and also calling for the death of Biden and Trump, the Palestinians, that is. In Seattle, Washington, anti-gun violence activists conducted a traffic jam for peace rally, blocking Interstate 5 to draw attention to gun violence. Finally, with a little bit of relation here to civil unrest, we'll look at some political unrest. Project 2025. The political left has begun using Project 2025 as a means to criticize former President Trump, as many of his former or current allies are involved in the Heritage Foundation's strategic initiative known as Project 2025. The conservative think tank aims to prepare for a potential Republican administration in 2025. The project looks to reduce federal bureaucracy, increase presidential power, and implement conservative policies. Trump has distanced himself from Project 2025, stating he has no involvement with it. Critics claim the initiative attempts to enact a national abortion ban, end Medicaid, deploy the military against citizens, and outlaw homosexuality. A review of the project's policies show it plans to redefine abortion as the killing of an unborn child, while allowing for the protections for the life of the mother and other exceptions. So it doesn't seek to ban it, just to redefine it. It also seeks to retain Medicaid, not get rid of it, and provide more choices for patients. It seeks to support traditional marriage, but not ban gay marriage. The founder of the collective said that the U.S. is, quote, in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left, that's the political left, allows it to be, end quote. Trump said, I have no idea who is behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things that they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them. So that was Trump's take on it, and we gave you kind of a more wild quote by the founder of it, talking about things will remain bloodless if the left will allow it to be. And we covered some of the claims and some of what the actual policies say. If you want to hear more about this project, the Grayman Briefing covered it in detail and also provided sources. That's it for this week's summary of recent developments. Remember that these briefings are delivered in real time to Grayman Briefing subscribers at graymanbriefing.com, sent via the Telegram and Signal apps, as well as a weekly email. Due to time constraints and the risk of censorship, we don't cover it all here on this broadcast. The Grayman Brief is open to the public on Instagram and Telegram, so give them a follow and leave a comment either here or on Grayman Brief's socials. Thanks for listening. Remain aware, be vigilant, and stay safe.
Get unredacted, real-time briefings sent via email and through the Telegram and Signal apps by joining the Grayman Briefing.